Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jen Trechek. I'm a clinical manager at Jigsaw, and this is Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Hogan, and I'm a clinician with Fix Online.
Just trying to pull up this slideshow now. So, welcome to the webinar today. What we're going to talk about a little bit is about minding yourself and your mental health during COVID-19. As Rebecca said at the start, we are open to questions and comments and feedback and suggestions as we go along, so please do type them in. Just to reassure you, nobody else can see what you type. It comes straight through to Jigsaw, and then we respond to them. So please do kind of share your ideas or your suggestions or any questions as we go along. That would be really helpful. What we wanted to just kind of put out there at the start, I suppose, is to say this is really trying to encourage you to think about things that you can do to mind your own mental health and things that you can do from a position of being locked down at home, particularly. It's not designed to be prescriptive or to make you feel that what you're doing is wrong in any way. It's not, you know, we not kind of saying that we have all of the answers. It's really just to offer some suggestions and some ideas for things that you might want to consider and might want to take forward in terms of managing your mental health. But if it's helpful, then take it. If it's not helpful, then leave it behind, and that's absolutely fine. We're going to touch on a few different areas that we think might be useful, but we're just touching on them. So we're aware that some of them we could expand on quite a lot more. So if there's areas that we touch on that you think, actually, I'd like a bit more information about that, or I'd like to kind of know more about that, then let us know through the comments. And what we can do is either address it in questions at the end, or we can do more webinars and go into some of the areas in a bit more depth in the future. So I suppose when we were putting this together and thinking about the current situation and people's mental health at the moment, what we know is that there's a lot out there on COVID-19 and on how we could and should be responding. There's lots of our social media feeds, particularly lots of things telling us what we should and shouldn't do, or what we should and shouldn't feel. And some of that can be helpful, but we know sometimes that can feel very overwhelming, and it can kind of make us really feel under pressure a lot of the time. And certainly that would be some of what we're hearing. So in Jigsaw, we're in contact with lots of young people through phone contact and through web chats and that kind of thing. And what we're hearing from young people is very much strong feelings that people are having in relation to the current situation. So we're hearing people experiencing a lot of guilt that maybe that they're feeling bad that they're not doing the marathon or the 5K that other people are doing, or they're not learning a new language, they're not having a great experience bonding with their family, and that's they're feeling bad about that. Lots of loneliness. We get a sense that people feel everyone else is on Zoom and having a great time, and they're not. Or we're hearing from people whose partners, boyfriends or girlfriends are in other houses, and they're really struggling with that sense of loneliness and isolation. As you'd expect, I suppose, fear around the future, around what will happen. We're hearing fear around jobs and that kind of thing. Combined with anger, people are very upset and annoyed that things have been cancelled, disappointed, anger around the lack of certainty that we have at the moment, and challenges at home. We're hearing a lot around people feeling under stress and pressure. Some of that is from work, from school, and exams, not kind of knowing what's going to happen, feeling that there's a lot of work coming through that they don't really feel able to keep up with. And also stress from parents and from families, feeling under pressure in that sense. Kind of coupled with that, we're hearing a lot around lack of motivation, low mood, people just feeling really down with the weight of what's happening, with what's going on at the moment. Some people feeling very bored, frustrated, people feeling overwhelmed, and a lot of numbness, people maybe not able to kind of get in touch with what they're really feeling because it just feels too much. Now, there's no right or wrong way to feel in the situation, as we know, but I suppose just to acknowledge that if you are experiencing some of those feelings or all of those feelings at different times, that's not unusual. You're not on your own with that. And we know social media feeds can be curated to look really amazing, that some people are doing some great things and having a great time, but we know how easily that can be manipulated as well. So if you are experiencing some of these feelings, you're definitely not on your own in that.
Yeah, so I think that kind of leads on. Some of you might have heard the phrase hardship Olympics. Sounds kind of funny, but it's kind of like what Jen is saying about that guilt that, we're feeling these things, but there's also a sense of either people are telling us or we're feeling that how can I feel sad or anxious or upset when there are so many other people that have a lot worse suffering. And like how can I feel disappointed that like my sports are all closed when there are other people that maybe can't go outside or have lost loved ones. But really suffering doesn't work like that and pain doesn't work like that. If you think back to even like a baby, when a baby is crying, you don't tell the baby to stop crying because they could be in a war-torn country and they could be starving. It just doesn't work like that, and our emotions don't work like that. There's no kind of tally on emotions. So going back to what Jen was saying, like it's okay to feel that way and it doesn't have to compare to anybody else's suffering. It's okay just to kind of accept that that's where you are now. Um, and yeah, to feel that, to acknowledge it is pretty important. So this is something that maybe some of you are aware of, this kind of way of looking at our thoughts and our feelings. So it comes from the cognitive behavioral therapy model. So it's basically just a way of unpicking what we're going through. So a lot of things will start with our thoughts. So for example, something might happen like, I don't know, for some people, longitude was cancelled. So that's a really disappointing thing. So your thoughts might be, I was so looking forward to that. I'm really disappointed. And then you might add on an extra thought of, God, why am I feeling so disappointed about that? It could be a lot worse. So as well as feeling that disappointment, you're also feeling that kind of guilt, that like anxiety that you can't do anything about it, maybe feeling a little bit more hopeless. And what you might do, so coming down to the third little picture there, what you do. So if you're feeling that kind of hopelessness, that lack of motivation, then it might be difficult to get out of bed. You might want to just watch TV, escape a little bit more. And this circle kind of continues. Whereas if you go back to the start with that, with your first thought about just feeling disappointed, just feel disappointed. That's okay. You don't have to feel guilt about that. And then think about what you would tell a friend to do, or treat yourself kindly because something really disappointing has happened to you. So what could you do to kind of lift your mood? What brings you pleasure? Whatever that is for you. So treating yourself kindly, kind of taking away that guilt and doing something nice for yourself, and hopefully that will kind of affect what way you're thinking. So another thing we've decided to include here, and I just think it's prevalent for just about everybody. Everybody's worrying right now, and it's totally understandable. But to kind of understand where worry comes from and what we can control within worries. So everybody has worries, everybody has thoughts, and it's kind of like blood coming into our heart. We just can't stop what thoughts come into our head sometimes. So you might have a thought like, okay, I have a headache. But then that turns into a worry like, oh God, what if it's coronavirus? And then maybe I've passed it on to somebody, and you're adding these links into the worry chain, and it kind of turns into almost like a spiral, and it feels, a little bit out of control. So it's not a pleasant place to be, but there is something that we can do to kind of stop that chain. And at Jigsaw, we kind of reintroduce it as like a worry tree. So when a worry comes into your head, it's okay. Just kind of ask yourself, okay, what am I worrying about? So one example could be like, oh my God, when is this going to end? When is isolation going to end? Just something I think everybody has really thought about. But taking that, so asking yourself, like, is that a problem that I can do something about? And unless you're Leo Varadkar or very high up, really, you can't do anything about that at all. So the answer is no. So you go down to that side of the diagram. And then you can let the worry go because this isn't something that you have control over. So continuing in that chain of worry is not actually going to be helpful for you or for anybody else. But sometimes a worry can, you can do something about a worry, and a worry can be useful to like plan for future events, things like that. So another worry that some people might be having is, I've got an exam coming up and I'm going to fail. So asking yourself again, is this a problem that I can do something about? So if the answer is yes, then maybe just write a list of what can you do about it, writing it down, and then looking at your options. So from that list of options, is there anything that you can do right now? So for that worry, that might be, you know, getting into contact with a teacher, a friend, doing 10 minutes of study right there and then just to get started. So you do it now, anything that you can do, just do it now, and then you can let the worry go. Or if it's something that you can't do right now, you could just make a plan of what you will do when you have the time or when you have the opportunity to do it, and you can let the worry go. So again, it's kind of stopping the worry at the start of that worry train, at the start of the worry chain, and doing something about it. But in the end, just letting the worry go, because that's kind of the most useful thing that you can do for yourself.
I think the challenge is there's so much uncertainty around at the moment, and we like to have certainty and control, and it's trying to focus on the things that are within our control and try and let go a little bit of some of the things that aren't. Although of course we're going to feel worried about it, but it's trying to focus our area and our attention on the things that we can potentially do something about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I suppose one of the things that we can do something about is really self-care and how we look after ourselves and what we do to mind ourselves. And I suppose the term self-care is used quite a lot, and different kind of descriptions of it. But it's really the activities or the things that we can do that nourish us, that help us to feel good in ourselves, that kind of restore us, give us energy back, make us feel better in ourselves. And when we're not in lockdown, there's lots of things that might include. So it could be things like, you know, sports groups or going to a social activity with friends that aren't feasible at the moment. So we need to kind of revisit what are the things that help us to feel good and restore and replenish our energy and ourselves. And there isn't a right or wrong answer with it. I suppose some of the things that maybe we would have done previously that did nourish us might no longer feel nourishing. So maybe kind of going on WhatsApp and having a chat with friends was once something that made you feel great, but maybe now that's a little bit draining. Maybe going out for a run was something that you really enjoyed previously and it gave you energy, and now maybe that's a little bit scary and that you find that maybe a little bit more challenging. So it's revisiting what are the things right now in the current situation that do help me to give me that sense of myself, to give me a sense of kind of feeling okay, and try, you know, it's a case of experimenting a little bit. There's no point in us saying do this. You have to figure out what is it for you, and it'll be different for all of us. We all have different kind of things that help us to feel that little bit better. But think about in your day, is there activities that you are doing that give you that sense of feeling okay, sense of enjoyment, a sense of nourishment? And if there's not, then really trying to pay attention to that and try and identify some activities, some alternatives. And Jigsaw Online, we've got a few different suggestions and ideas on there.
I think that's
One
important
of the
just to
things,
say that it changes all the time and that it's not like that prescriptive list. And I think social media can be terrible for that, kind of having your tick list of meditate and, you know, do yoga, tick it all off. And if you don't feel better after that, then what's wrong with you?
doesn't work that way.
No.
And routine is something that we're being told a lot that we have to have or we should have, and there's lots of different ideas out there about what we should be doing in our day. And I suppose from a mental health perspective, what we would say is some level of structure is helpful because it can help us to, you know, identify night and day. It can help us to know when is our relaxation time and really enjoy that relaxation time and downtime, differentiate between week and weekend, which helps just the days to pass a little bit quicker. But it is really difficult in the current environment to have any kind of routine similar to what we would have had before. So in terms of routine, again, there's no right or wrong way, and it's a case of figuring out what works for you. But maybe take a step back and think about what are the things that you need to include in your day or you want to include in your day, and some way of kind of planning that out to an extent in a flexible way. All routines should be flexible, and you won't achieve everything that you want to achieve every day. But whatever works for you, maybe think about is structuring it around meal times, or trying to do one thing in the afternoon and one thing in the morning, whatever you feel is important for you. Exercise is something that comes in a lot when we talk about routine, and we know there's a lot out there saying what you should be doing. And again, we want to be really careful and not kind of say this is a definitive everybody should be doing it. What we can say is we do know that exercise and activity have a positive impact on mental health and can really help. And often it's when we're really not feeling like it that actually getting out, for example, for a walk can really do wonders for how we feel. It doesn't have to be really energetic, going for a run or anything like that, but just getting out and getting a bit of fresh air and walk around can be beneficial. So I suppose just just to acknowledge some level of structure is important, but finding the right structure for you that suits you in the current situation. It's not forever. So you might, at the moment, you might find getting up a little bit later and going to bed a bit later works for you. It doesn't mean that you're going to continue that forever. I suppose the other thing to say in routine, and we'll talk about it a little bit later again, is around the household that you're living in. Might have a bit to say on that, in that if you're living with other people, they will have needs too in terms of their routines. If you've got parents who are working, they will have needs in terms of the environment in the house and the activities that are happening. So just to be cognizant and aware of that and think about that, and try and maybe negotiate a little bit around that. Just something to bear in mind when you're considering what you want to put into your day and to achieve from your day. I think Lynn's going to talk a little bit about loneliness and isolation.
Yeah, so I don't think that we could do a webinar about mental health without really including loneliness and isolation now. I think it's absolutely a human reaction to what we're going through right now with the restrictions that are in place. It really is only human to feel a level of loneliness, and that we're separated from the connections that usually are so valuable to us, and they'll continue to be when this is all lifted. I think to kind of explore it a little bit more, I think, you know, there is a lot now about being connected online, and how this will kind of fulfill you, and it's going to make you feel the same way that it would do if you were to meet your friends in person. But this is not really the case. They are two totally different things. So I think it is okay to feel loneliness even straight after doing a video chat with friends, because you're still not getting that exact same connection. It can be very hard to kind of, it's a totally different platform really, and you know there's so many different parts to it that is not normal in our own interaction. Like we can't really see each other, and the connection might be bad, and it's a totally different way of communicating. So I think it can be helpful to kind of lower our expectations of, you know, connecting using these apps and using different platforms, and also give ourselves permission to say no to them, you know, to mute a group chat that we're not really finding useful, to say no to a house party. Instead, we want to get some space or do something on our own or just watch TV. But it's perfectly okay to make those decisions ourselves. And I think
sometimes, you know,
sorry, go on.
just picking up the phone, you know, sometimes that face to face can be really tiring and really hard. So having a phone conversation can be just a nice way to switch off and have a one-on-one where you're really listening rather than kind of engaging in this way, which definitely can be draining.
Yeah.
And the other thing to say, I suppose, is we're finding some people are feeling very much that everybody else is in communication all the time and that maybe they're the ones being left out, which is probably not the case. It can feel like it. Maybe some people are opting out of communication because they just don't feel in a position themselves to be able to engage in a chat. You know, it just feels too overwhelming, and they don't feel, you know, in themselves ready to engage in those kind of conversations. Which, if you're on the receiving end of that, can feel a little bit rejecting and a little bit like that's somebody rejecting you. But I suppose just to flip it around, sometimes that might be that person protecting their own mental health, and that's okay too. So just to acknowledge that it's not as, when we can't see what's going on for somebody else, we can often kind of draw lots of conclusions about what might be going on and kind of imagine what's going on, and the reality is not always that. So just to try and, going back to that worry tree and that kind of escalation of worries, to try and bring it back down to what we know and the facts rather than what we imagine or we think we know.
And I think that kind of ties straight into that reality. When we are communicating online, realities are skewed a little bit. So it can kind of, you know, it's very easy to pretend when we're texting or even on a video phone call that everything is fine. And, you know, you're getting up early in the morning and you're writing your novel and you're doing your workouts and you're keeping really motivated, and you can kind of say all these things and you can smile. But when it's online, it's very difficult to tell how you are or how the person you're talking to really is. So I think the question, just how are you actually feeling? Like, what is going on for you? It's a pretty important question, and it can get lost a little bit. That's not to say that every chat that you have has to be filled with, like, you know, speaking about your mental health or things like that. But I think it's important, just even if you have one person that you can speak to quite honestly about and tell them really what's going on. And if there's not that one person for you, then there are always free listening services available, like the Samaritans, a call service that you can speak to, and it's totally non-judgmental, and that might just help you to get something off your chest as well. Right, so we've included just a little bit about, I suppose, living at home and the challenges that can bring. So dealing with family and siblings and whoever it is that you're sharing a home with. So this is something that comes up a lot for young people that we have the chat with, that maybe there's a lot of arguments at home, or the parents or siblings just don't understand what's going on for them at all. Maybe they are used to like a certain level of independence, that you might have been living in like a college and now you're living at home and getting used to living with your parents again. Or maybe you need space by spending time in your bedroom, but your parents don't understand why you're spending so much time in your room alone, and they're worried. And lots of things can happen, I guess, like lots of misunderstandings when your expectations are different from your parents' expectations. And one thing we just really it is so challenging. I mean, there's no magic cure for this. It's a really, really hard time, but communication can really help. Just being honest, like just saying, maybe communicating with your parents, this is what I want, like this is how you can help me. Because a lot of the webinars and things, when we're chatting to parents, what they're kind of saying, we want to help but we don't know how. So just kind of, I guess, ask, like saying if it is that you just need to be able to spend some more time on your own in your room, or if you need to have the mornings like no chat at breakfast time, maybe that helps. Or and that will kind of give you the strength to be more social at different times, if you want to be able to speak more at lunch, dinner, whatever it is. It's not an easy thing to do, but I guess it's just something to keep in mind. And do your parents really know what's going on, or are your family members, and is there a way that you can communicate that a little bit better?
Yeah. We hear it from both sides, young people not wanting to worry their parents as well, or feeling that maybe if they talk about what's going on, that parents will, they've got so much other things going on and they're worried about employment and they're worried about the future, that they don't want to hear a young person's stressors. But that's absolutely the opposite of what we hear from parents, is that when a young person isn't communicating, they're more worried. So they absolutely do want to know what's going on, even if they don't necessarily have the answers. Just sharing that can really help, kind of a problem shared, problem halved. So we're kind of lucky enough, we hear it from both sides. Just a few oh, go on, Linda. Yeah.
No, you go. This is a classic example of communication, how it can be difficult.
Just a few things to know that, oh, sorry, can I go back? At Jigsaw that we're offering at the moment, so we are offering daily group chats online. There's different themes, and if you go on to jigsawonline.ie, you'll see the different chats that we have scheduled, and you can sign up to those, and it's kind of completely text based, so you can do it in the house when there's other people around. Sometimes you don't want to be talking, but you can be typing, so it's not an audio thing. So that's just an option if you want to kind of connect in with other young people, and they're facilitated by a clinician, but really kind of the support from other young people is perhaps what's most helpful about them. We also have Jigsaw services, face-to-face services aren't operating at the moment in the same way, but we do have a call line, so 1-800-JIGSAW, which is 544-729, where you can call and speak to a Jigsaw clinician and talk about what's going on for you, get some ideas, get some suggestions and some help. You can arrange a call back if you prefer, so you can text call me to that number 086-180-3880 with a time that would suit you, and a clinician will call you back at that time. Or there's an option where you can email help@jigsaw.ie at any time, and a clinician will respond via email as soon as they can, but within working hours. So it's just to say there's a few different options for support from Jigsaw if you feel that there's a specific thing that you might benefit from talking directly to a clinician from. So that was a real kind of whistle-stop tour of some ideas around self-care. We know that it's very much a whistle-stop tour. So if there's any kind of particular questions or any thoughts, comments, ideas, please do type them in and we'll do our best to respond. I have had a question in here, which is from Anya. So asking, what advice would you have for someone who wants to reach out to a service for help but feels anxious about doing it in case they're taking it away from a person who might need it more? Do you want to respond to that, Linda?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a very kind way to think about it. But you know, I think it comes into that kind of guilt thing that maybe my problem is not as big as somebody else's problem, but really your problem is personal, and you absolutely deserve support. And I would definitely tell them to reach out for the support, because you do deserve it, and there is enough support available for people. So lots of the mental health supports are now online. They might just look a little bit different, but they are available. So please, I would definitely say get some support for yourself, because again, it comes back to that thing that you need to find support for yourself first before you can give support to anybody else. So definitely put yourself first.
And I guess one of the things we would always say at Jigsaw is once you know that you need some help, the earlier you can access that support, the better. I mean, it's never ever too late to access support, and you can at any stage. But if you can reach out early, it might be more manageable, and kind of stopping things getting worse. So the earlier you can do that, the better, although it's never too late. And nothing, certainly from a Jigsaw perspective, is too small to reach out for support for. You know, if it's troubling you and if it's kind of playing on your mind and it's affecting your life, that's enough. So absolutely, please do reach out, Anya.
I have a question in here from Copeland, I think. So the question is, do you know of any online support groups for the LGBT youth?
So I think Belong To are just about to transfer some of their face-to-face groups into online support. belongto.org, I want to say, or no, belongto.ie.
Yeah, I would either of those. Yeah, no.
And so they belong to a great organization who would normally run face-to-face groups and support groups for LGBT young people. And I think, and I hope I'm right here, I think they're just about to start their online group support for LGBT young people. Any more questions coming in there?
Not from me anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I think I've got some coming through. No. Yeah, I've got one here which is really, we get this a lot question. What advice would you give to somebody who's difficulty starting things? Like, I keep putting stuff off. So kind of procrastination, essentially, starting the day with the best of intentions and then putting things off. Any thoughts on that?
I think you're not alone. I mean, it's totally normal now, more than ever, because our routine and our structure is gone. So I think it's a really difficult time to be starting something or to be trying to get our motivation together. I think the first thing is just to kind of take it easy and take the pressure off, that you don't need to be motivated, waking up, springing out of bed. I think just starting small, like, maybe making a priority, like what do you want to get started on, and then doing that for like 5 minutes in the morning, just setting kind of little goals. And yeah, I think just starting small would be what I would advise, because I think that we're all putting ourselves under a little bit of pressure to have the routines that we used to. And getting, like, chatting about it as well, like getting support from friends or from family about what it is in particular that you want to do, that can help as well.
I think the breaking it down is really helpful, because I always think about the mountain analogy. When you look up at a mountain and it seems huge and you think, oh, can I even start? It's really hard to take the first step because you think of how much you have ahead of you. Whereas if you can break it down and think about the smallest bit or the first step, and just focus on that. So instead of thinking, I've got this massive essay to write, it's going to take me hours, maybe think about, can I just write 5 lines? Can I just do a tiny first step just to get into it? And often it kind of snowballs after that, but don't think about the big, try and break it down into something a lot smaller. And don't be afraid as well, I'd say, to use people in your house to kind of pull you to task. You know, say to your parents, this is what I want to do. Can you just check in with me? Don't give me a hard time, but check in with me. Have I done it? Share with your friends what it is that you're aiming to get done, and ask them to check in with you. Because, you know, when you have a goal for yourself, that's a start. But if you can share your goal with somebody else, then they can really help to motivate you as well.
Okay, I've got another question here from Dermot. What advice would you give to teachers to support young people?
To teachers to support young people at the moment?
Teachers to support young people at the moment, yeah.
Good question. I mean, I think teachers are in a really difficult position because they're at home and they're sending through the amount of work that they feel is helpful to young people to try and keep them motivated and to keep them on top of things, and that's their job as a teacher. But I suppose the challenge in the current situation is that maybe a lot of teachers aren't getting the feedback that they would normally get from young people. They're maybe not getting the amount of work they would do normally. And I think for a lot of young people, what we're hearing from a lot of young people is that sense of pressure. It's too much, I can't cope, they're not listening. So there's something about kind of recognizing from both sides what's the motivation. So I think a teacher's motivation in giving the work is really to encourage young people, but maybe alongside that work that they're sending through is maybe the message of how we don't want you to put your mental health at risk because of this, you know, that we're open to hearing from young people, we're open to feedback, we really want to help you to make the most of your time at the moment. That's our job right now. So I'm absolutely sure if that question is from a teacher, they will have said that, but sometimes you need to say it again and again and again and keep reiterating it so that it lands, that, you know, you are there, you're open to feedback, and you want to hear back from young people. You're not doing the work that you're doing to put them under pressure, you're doing it to support them, and you would encourage them to look after their mental health as well.
I think it's really important to keep continuing to kind of check in, because I think, as you said, like a lot of young people are feeling that pressure, and then if you're avoiding homework, you might be avoiding communication with teachers, so you're not really having a voice. But if a teacher kind of keeps checking in just to see, and yeah, I think that would be really useful.
We do have some teacher webinars as well, which are up on Jigsaw Online under the parent section if you want to take a look at those. A question, what can you do to help feeling trapped and claustrophobic due to this current situation? So somebody trapped at home. Oh, Linda's gone down. No, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see me or hear me?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, so it's so tough because our usual support, or you know what we speak about before, is so different now. So I mean, nobody is an expert, and I wouldn't claim to be an expert in this in any regard. I think it's personal to you. So what usually helps to give you space? So for some people, they actually might feel more space by talking to other people. That might help them to feel less claustrophobic. But for others, it might be silence. So maybe it's, you know, getting outside without music, and maybe just noticing the sounds outside, like lying on the grass, kind of getting back in touch with like your senses, like feeling the grass, things like that, that can be kind of mindful and reconnecting into nature. And also, if you're feeling claustrophobic at home, I think home can be a really difficult place to be right now. But maybe having that chat with whoever you're living with at home, if you are living with somebody, and about space. So maybe it's about using rooms differently. That you have the sitting room at one stage, and they have another room, so that you feel that you have space in whatever room that you do have, or that your bedroom is a safe space, and you want to, you know, be uninterrupted when you're in your room. Just kind of having that discussion with whoever you're living with.
Yeah, I was going to mention grounding as well there, which you kind of did in terms of anchoring yourself in some way. I wonder as well, though, with that kind of feeling trapped and claustrophobic, there's a sense of emotions building up, and kind of in the current climate, I think people are maybe trying to push those down more than they might do normally, you know, try and kind of squash them down so I don't have a meltdown or have a panic or have you know, a kind of a breakdown in front of people at home. So I wonder if there's a different way to try and express some of that emotion that is being built up, you know, whether that's through writing, which a lot of people find really helpful, or music, or some way of acknowledging those feelings, you know, that you're feeling trapped, and that's completely understandable. Writing it all out, getting it all out of your system, rather than allowing it to kind of sit there and feel heavy and then kind of build up so it feels like it's going to explode. I don't know if that makes sense. And then, as you said, kind of relaxation, grounding, getting back in touch, and trying to help yourself to calm down and to release some of that kind of trapped feeling.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions coming in.
Oh, I've got one. The fact that I don't know when this lockdown is going to end is very difficult to deal with. I keep having feelings that it's not going to end soon, and it's hard to feel like I won't relapse into bad habits. It's easy to say that it'll end soon, but it's hard to believe. Anything else that can help? I mean, I think that's all of us. Everybody probably, when this started, had a sense that, oh, it'll only be for a few weeks. It'll only be, and we're kind of thinking to the future. And it's dragging out, and none of us do know when it's going to end. And I think if we're kind of constantly focusing on the future and an end point, we're not maybe looking at how we're dealing with it in the current situation and the right now, because we're holding out until, and that until isn't coming. So I would say maybe it's taking a step back and focusing on the present. Try, and I know it's hard, but try not to focus too far into the future right now. You know, focus on how am I going to get through the next while, the current situation as it is, with the information that I have. So we know that we're social isolating for now, and we know that things aren't reopening for now anytime soon. So how am I going to deal with that, rather than trying to say, oh, it'll be over soon, and then it's not over, and it's kind of nearly a disappointment when it isn't over. So I don't know whether that you would add to that. And I know it's not an easy thing to do, but really kind of coming back into the present moment rather than going too far forward.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of framing it, and it's going back to those things that we can and we can't control, that we can't control when this is lifted. So if we try to control that and say, okay, it will be next week, or it will be the 5th of May when we hear news, you know, we're trying to control something that we really don't have power over. And the only power, the control that we do have, is kind of our reactions, what we can do in the present, what we can do now to help us. So it's not, you'd love to be able to give a bigger answer than that, but that's kind of the reality that we're all dealing with now.
And the other thing that I would say is really important is just to acknowledge the strength that it has taken for you to survive thus far. You know, we're 5 weeks in, and you have survived. You know, it's maybe been really hard, but for anyone who's kind of still here, you've drawn on something that you have within you to help you to cope, and just remind yourself of that, and you know, recognize that strength within yourself, that you do have that strength and capacity. I know it's really hard, and it kind of feels that it's drawing thinner and thinner, but it's there, and kind of acknowledge it and notice that is within you, that strength is there, and then kind of recognize that would be quite helpful.
Yeah. So we have kind of another question just in relation to school. So it was kind of in response about when we were speaking about the teacher support and how teachers can support young people. So somebody, Rebecca, asked about that sometimes teachers can send on too much work to even get done, and I suppose how to kind of deal with that. The other
Yeah,
side.
it's really hard. And I suppose, again, you know, when teachers are in school, they're all talking to each other, they all know the volume, they all have a sense of a class year group, and oh, that year group seems to be a bit stressed, and they're kind of maybe aware of that. And I suppose when everybody is so isolated in their own homes, the teachers aren't getting a sense of that necessarily from a class group. I hope I'm not doing them injustice on that. And they're also maybe not able to talk as easily to each other about what might be going on. So I would say, if at all possible, communicating back to each teacher that you're involved with to kind of say, this is what I have, this is what I can do, this is what's going on for me at the moment. And I hope that they would be receptive to that. And, you know, within all of it, work is obviously important, but mental health and kind of coming through this in a relatively positive way is really important too. So, you know, that pressure I think can sometimes feel like it's coming from teachers through the volume of work. The other thing is, are we sometimes kind of adding to that pressure ourselves? You know, that sense of I have to do all of these things, and actually take a step back and say, well, do you? You know, what's the worst thing that can happen if you don't get that essay in? What's the worst thing that can happen if you don't keep up with things? Is some of that kind of internally driven? Can you take a step back from that and just kind of release some of that pressure that seems to be there, and maybe review how you're kind of responding to, or how you're hearing the messages from teachers as well. I think sometimes when we're in a certain frame of mind, we view a message in one way that maybe when we're feeling a bit better in ourselves and feeling a bit brighter, we might view that message in a slightly different way. So a teacher may be giving us a particular amount of work, might be because they feel we've got the capacity to do it, and it's maybe a kind of a nod to our strength, but we see it as being a negative, that they're always kind of putting more and more on us. So I suppose just to take a step back and really kind of see, is there a different way to look at how you're receiving the information from teachers?
So I think that came up for, I think it's Kira as well. So she was asking about struggling to keep up with schoolwork and any ideas. So it will be about the communicating with teachers, looking at the pressure that we might be placing on ourselves, and how we're kind of interpreting messages from teachers. Yeah, because it seems to be something that's kind of coming up about the amount of work that they're being given, and also it kind of links in with the lack of motivation that some people are feeling. So it's a difficult
and I think
one.
It's very easy to focus on what we're not doing and not acknowledge what we are doing. So think about, you know, it can feel like there's so much left to do, but how much have you done already? And kind of just noticing that you are doing some stuff, and that's okay. Got a question here from Graham. How can I let out the anger about COVID-19? So anger is something, a strong emotion that's building up, understandably. So any kind of thoughts around how to let some of that anger out?
Yeah, I think it's great that, you know, he's recognizing that, because I think it's a healthy emotion, and sometimes we see anger and we're like, oh God, we can't be angry, and kind of keep it inside, and then it will come out in a burst, and it might come out like in a conflict with somebody or in an argument, or we might just get really angry over something small that's happened, and we know this really because of COVID-19. I'd say, like, I guess ask yourself, like, what do you usually do to release emotion anyway? What usually works for you? It's so different for everybody. You know, it could be just getting outside and hitting a ball, or it could be like a form of like exercise. For some people, it can be quite healthy to like go for a strong run, or dance, or do something that kind of gets you in a sweat and releases those. I think with anger, like a lot of that kind of adrenaline that you might feel with anger can be released by moving, just moving your body. So yeah, that will kind of, understanding where the anger is coming from will be another one that I would think about, like however you would like to do that, whether it's talking about it with somebody or writing it down, kind of understanding where the root of that anger is coming from. And then when you do understand, maybe if you can, just kind of letting that go, appreciating that we can't maybe control the real cause of that anger, which is all these restrictions being placed on us, and just letting that go and trying to focus on something that will make us feel good.
Actually, Graham's followed up with a really interesting point. Will it help if I don't watch the news? And I suppose that's a really interesting thing, Graham, and something that is really worth noticing. We do have control over what we listen to, or what we hear, or what we surround ourselves with. So if you are faced with things that is just adding to your frustration or your anger or how you're feeling, absolutely shut it down. You know, if there's WhatsApp groups that are kind of pinging in and you're getting more and more pent up with it, turn them off. You don't need to be looking into all of those things all of the time. And you know, if the news is bothering you but you want to kind of know what's going on, just pick a designated time, you know, look at it for, you know, half an hour in the morning or the evening, and just limit yourself to that. Don't feel you have to always be keeping on top of things or in touch with things. You know, it's okay to take a step back from those things that are causing those strong feelings or that anger or that upset as well. And I think you rightly said, Linda, anger, it's okay to be angry. It's an awful situation that we're in. It's not fair. Things are being cancelled left, right, and centre. There's a real sense of loss. Plans are being ruined, and it's all right to feel angry about that. But maybe just to think about all the things that are contributing to that, write them down, going back to what are some of the things that we can control, what are the things that we can't control, and finding a way to try and let some of it go. Anger, if it builds up, it's not helpful. It's okay to acknowledge it, to get it out. Maybe try journaling again. I'm going to go back to that. Writing it out, getting it out of your system. But it's not wrong to feel angry.
Okay, I have a question here. So sometimes I feel guilty about telling people how I actually feel because I understand this is hard for everyone. I also don't want to worry people who can't see me, like my teachers and my friends.
Yeah, I think that guilt is it's really common, and I suppose we all have the right to say no to other people. If you think about everybody who comes to you and talks to you about their own mental health or how they're feeling, you don't have to take that on board. You can kind of say, no, it's okay, I want to shut off from that right now, and other people can do that to us too. So if we open up and somebody isn't in a frame of mind to hear it, we can talk to other people. There's a range of different people maybe that we can try that with, but to be honest, I think a lot of people find it reassuring that other people are struggling too. What we hear a lot is everybody else is fine, it's just me. So kind of gently opening up and saying, actually, I'm struggling at times, for other people, I think might be somewhat reassuring, and it lets them know that you're willing to talk about it and that they can talk about how they're feeling with you as well, potentially. And it can be quite helpful. It is a case of choosing the right person at the right time, and we don't want those kind of feelings to dominate all of the conversations we have. But certainly I think it's helpful to find some people that we can share some of those thoughts and feelings with, and don't feel guilty about doing that. It's really important for all of us to support ourselves by talking about what's going on for us at this time. I don't know, does that answer it, Linda? Would you add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. Yeah, I was trying to add something, but I couldn't.
That's right. I've got a question here from Cara. I would usually use school or going out to distract myself or get away from problems, but I now can no longer do that now, and I actually have to sit with my own thoughts so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can start it off anyway, but I think that's definitely true. We have so much time with our thoughts now, and I would say, now might not be the time to kind of really reflect. For some people it might, be the time, but I think now when, there is like a lot of difficulties around to deal with, and there is a lot of time, but it might not be the time to kind of really sit with their thoughts and to deeply reflect and to think about things that have happened before, or because sometimes it's best to do that with somebody else and face to face, or to deal with our, I guess too much time on our own can sometimes not be that helpful. If distraction has helped you before, so like having that routine like school and different things that you used to do before, is there any way that you can kind of replicate that? It won't be the same, but is there a way that you can kind of get a little bit of a routine going so you're engaged and focused in things, so that you're not kind of sitting down with your thoughts all of the time? And so what are the activities that you can kind of really focus in on? And even if it's like crosswords or things like that, not that you have to be doing something all of the time, but just things that you can kind of focus on and that you quite enjoy doing throughout the day, because it is a lot of time to be spending with our thoughts. And it is difficult, and it's okay to kind of acknowledge that as well.
We're both occupational therapists, and we talk about flow activities, which are those activities that you really kind of get into to the exclusion of everything else. And things like running would be a good example, where sometimes you just get in the zone and all the thoughts kind of disappear. But there's other activities as well that require you to really focus, and it can be a really complicated puzzle, or it can be like building Lego, those activities that you just get sucked into. Online gaming for some people can be one of those things. So maybe thinking about what activities have you done in the past, or that you could try that get you into that kind of flow state where, you know, all of those kind of thoughts and worries are just kind of melting away a little bit. And the other thing that some people have tried that can be useful are kind of mindfulness apps. And I know it's a term that's used a lot, mindfulness. There's different ways of doing it, but if you haven't tried it, it might be worth considering. Headspace is a good option to start with, just short mindfulness exercises, and it's a free app to download. Okay, we're kind of coming to the end of time.
Yeah, I've got one kind of quick one,
Yep.
just to finish us off. So it's in relation to school. So if I'm feeling anxious about schoolwork or not getting something done in time, should I be really open with my teacher about it and tell her how I'm feeling?
Short answer, yes.
Yeah,
I would say.
I knew it was going to be a short
Yeah,
one.
I mean, in Jigsaw, we are talking to teachers as well, and the message we're getting from them is that they really want to hear from students. They're worried about students, and they want to have that feedback from them as to what's going on for them. So if you can at all, it would be good to let them know how you're feeling. And you know, there mightn't be an easy answer to it, but they might just kind of have that awareness and that acknowledgement for you. So it depends on the school, and your school will have different policies about whether you can email a teacher or whether they're making contact in whatever way. It's worth noticing as well, or noting, guidance counsellors are still working from home in different ways, and maybe there is the opportunity to touch base. I don't know, each school is slightly different. But absolutely, if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious with regards to schoolwork, then talking to teachers about that is definitely a good idea. Okay. There's been some really lovely questions coming in, and I hope we've kind of maybe touched on some answers that might be helpful. If we haven't, then please come on to Jigsaw Online and maybe have a look at some of the resources on there, or do feel free to contact us via help@jigsaw.ie, or the Jigsaw 1-800-JIGSAW, that's the number. Give us a call, and you can talk individually to a clinician about what's going on for you, and you might get a more kind of individual or personalized response. I think it's helpful to hear what's going on, and hopefully you can hear that maybe other people are experiencing similar challenges to you, or maybe some different challenges as well, and that's okay. Take what's helpful, disregard the rest. If there's things that we've said that you don't agree with, or that they don't resonate with you, or they don't fit for you, that's absolutely fine. Then just let it go. If there's things from today that you think you'd like some more, so this is our first webinar for young people, I need to say that, and if it's useful, we can do more, and we can go into more depth on any particular topics if that would be helpful. So if you can, in the comments, then just let us know that, or we'll be sending through a questionnaire, kind of a feedback questionnaire. So please do be honest in that feedback. Tell us how we can do better. We're always open to that. Tell us what you want more of or less of, and we'll try and meet that in the future going forward. Okay, thank you for joining us, and we may see you again.
Yeah.